Hello everyone, and welcome to this month's podcast. I'm going to speak to you on this podcast about sacred symbols, energy portals, and time loops that I found along the holy axis as I went further along my pilgrimage to connect to my ancestral link. You may remember from the last podcast that I decided to go on a pilgrimage to connect with my ancestors by following the ley line of the holy axis as described in the book by Gary Bilcliffe and Caroline Hoare. I made a start by visiting Bamborough Castle in Northumberland because I had been told that that was where there was an ancestral link to the family name of Scott, and due to the connection with Sir Walter Scott. Scott just happened to be my maiden name, and I vaguely remember visiting my father's relatives in Northumberland as a small child. Bamborough Castle was amazing, and it left me feeling quite high from the energy of the land, especially where the two ley lines crossed at King Arthur's seat. So I was eager to continue my adventures and decided to visit the next portal that I felt drawn to, which was Rosslyn Chapel. Now, you may have heard of Rosslyn Chapel in the Da Vinci Code. I had read the Da Vinci Code, like many people, and actually wondered how much of the story was fact and how much was fiction, and I was about to find out. So this time, instead of taking Mark to join me, I invited two good friends who are both energetically aware, and Leanne, my gorgeous daughter. I felt that they would be more able to share my enthusiasm for the energy and sense more consciously than Mark would because although he's very open to it, he doesn't feel things and sense things the same as I do. So I thought going with the ladies would be an amazing way of sharing this experience. And what happened was very extraordinary. So I don't think he would have managed to have understood it or support me during what happened. And I'm not going to lie, next time I go and visit an energy portal or node, I might want to curb my enthusiasm a little before entering an energetic portal after what you're about to hear happened. So the ladies and I had researched the spots Gary and Caroline had mentioned in their book and plotted the area we wanted to visit, both in the glen that surrounds the chapel and the chapel itself. So we met up at a wonderful Georgian house that was quite elegant and grand and just down the road from the chapel. So armed with our dowsing rods, we set off to the glen to find the ley lines and the portals. There was definitely an air of magic as we wandered into the glen and found the markings on the wall that Gary mentions in his book and the ruined castle that led down to Wallace's cave. The cave is where Gary mentions there is a strong energy portal and another portal, a point where there is a node where the energy lines cross. Now, the descent to Wallace's cave was quite steep and tricky to navigate at that time of year because the ground was very wet and slippery. So we contemplated whether to risk it or not. And while we were standing there wondering whether to do it or not, a young gentleman approaches from that direction and confirms that it is actually quite slippy underfoot and that if we do decide to go, we should tread carefully and with caution. So we ultimately decided it best to leave it. However, we did strike up a wonderful conversation with the young man, who only turned out to be a Sinclair. What are the odds of that? And he explains that he is of the family Sinclair that own the chapel. What? Oh my goodness, how fortunate are we to meet this man. He was so interesting. He spoke a little about the history of the place and the fallout between two brothers in their family that created a rift and a split in their family names. One part of the family that broke away was known as the Sinclairs, spelt S-I-N, Claire, and the other remained Saint Clair. So we laughed that, okay, so you're sinners and saints. He laughed with us and I said, are you a sinner or a saint? And he said, I'm a sinner. I wondered whether the book Angels and Demons by Dan Brown after the Da Vinci Code had any relevance to this man's story. He was so interesting and we spent a good 5-10 minutes with him chatting away. And this was one of the many, many synchronicities that were to follow during our visit to this area, and especially into Rosslyn Chapel. So we'd booked a time slot to visit the chapel the following day, and we're now even more eager to go after our conversation with the young man. We returned to the Georgian house like school children, chatting about the day, full of excitement and what might happen. So that evening we played with divination cards and we meditated on the chapel to see what we could connect to. Now in my meditation, I saw a hooded monk. He was a being. There was no face. It was just a hooded monk-like figure. And he said to me, obviously there was no words, but the feeling was that he was saying to me, it was important for me to visit the crypt in the chapel. He said the word crypt and script sound very similar, and there was a reason. And I thought, what a strange thing to say. But I remembered it because it rhymed, crypt and script. I was also told by the cards, the divination cards, that there would be a past life clearing for me in the chapel. All messages were noted, and we went to bed, thoroughly enjoying the adventure. The following day, we head off to the chapel early to spend time in the grounds and wander around the visitor centre. Gary from the book had mentioned that some of the tour guides in the chapel were not into energy lines and portals, that they were only interested in the architecture and the history, but there was one lady who was a tour guide who is into the energies and is exceptionally knowledgeable about the energies, and she was called Margaret. So we entered the chapel with no expectation, all four of us holding dowsing rods. We must have looked like Ghostbusters or something, but there we were, not many visitors that day. So we had been told by the people that were letting us in that if we wanted to stay longer, then we could do, because normally you only get an hour in there, and we could stay as long as we want. Oh, happy days. I can't wait to get in there. Not long inside with our dowsing rods, a lovely lady comes over smiling and says, I know what you're looking for, follow me. And of course her name was Margaret, the lady that Gary had spoken of. She took me to the keystone that I had read about. Apparently when the chapel was built, a keystone was placed directly over the portal that Gary mentions in the book. And he mentions that this keystone was put directly over where this portal is. Now, when you think back and realise that this chapel was built in the 15th century, it's quite inspiring to think that they must have maybe known more than us. Margaret said that they knew more about energy of the land back then, that they could feel it, and they used it for healings and much more. Stand here, she says, and took me to stand directly beneath the keystone. Look around, she said, you become one of the pillars. And sure enough, there were something like 7 pillars, and I made the 8th pillar standing on the keystone. And I did. And like symbolically, I felt like I was being made a pillar of strength. The energy. Oh, my sweet Lord, the energy was a rush of light that showered into my skull. In fact, I had to hold on to a pew to save me falling over. It was so powerful. Margaret stood watching and smiling, almost like she was excited to show us the energetic value of the chapel and eager to share more. She said, well, if you like that one, you'll love this one, she said. That you've just experienced is the crown chakra, and this over here is the pillar of the heart chakra. So I followed eagerly and stood leaning against the pillar of the heart chakra. And there was a significant difference in the frequencies. Hard to explain, but if you think of someone playing beautiful music and listening to 2 equally beautiful notes, both as pure as each other, but slightly different. Oh my goodness, I'm in heaven, me. I'm just leaning on this pillar, soaking up the heart energy, which was, I suppose, one of the words I would use, sweet. It was really sweet, entering into my body, flooding my body, my neurological system. I could feel myself just really absorbing all the energy and just stood there, drinking it in. Oh my goodness, this is amazing. So she then went on to explain to me, as I'm not moving from this pillar, I'm hogging this pillar, leaning on it, and just absorbing all this heart energy. And she goes on to explain all about the symbols, what they mean, and how people have reported UFO activity. She talks about the time loops in the chapel and much more. She points out to me all the different markings on the wall, which I actually am not qualified to tell you. So if you do go, it's so fascinating and so interesting. And I really hope that you get Margaret as your guide, because she really knows her stuff. So she said that there was a cornerstone. In fact, Leanne had wandered off, and she said it's where your daughter is sitting. And it was the first stone that was ever laid. And people have reported that their awareness shifts through time to the date when the chapel was built in the 15th century, and they lose all awareness of the here and now. Now, Leanne had wandered off and was actually sitting in the spot where the cornerstone was that she spoke about, totally unaware of the conversation Margaret and I were having, because there were not many people in the chapel. We were graced to have Margaret's full attention. It was amazing. So Leanne's sitting there, and I'm looking over at her, smiling at her, and all of a sudden Leanne comes rushing across to me. Obviously something dramatic had happened for her, and she explains, "Oh my God, Mum, there was pins and needles running up my arm." And as she sat touching the cornerstone, she said she felt herself drifting into another time zone. No idea what Margaret had just said to me. And she said, I totally lost awareness of today. I didn't know what year it was. I didn't know you were here. She went, I could just see what looked like when the chapel had just been built. There was monks there. I could see the monks walking around. She went, and I was really nervous because I knew that I was somehow slipping time, Mum. She said it was just incredible. She said she could see the monks walking clearly as she could see us. And she couldn't see us anymore, and that unnerved her. So she brought herself back really, really quickly. And she started to look around the chapel and said, I can see balls of light, Mum. And Margaret smiled. And Leanne looked a little shaken, eyes wide, staring at these, what she can see is balls of light. And we walked towards where the crypt was. There were steps in the chapel leading down into the crypt, and above the crypt she's got hold of my hand and she's pronouncing really loudly, oh my God, Mum, can you see this? And I'm like looking, can't see a blooming thing. And can you see these lights? She's saying to me, they are there and there and there. Her eyes are wide and she's transfixed, and she's saying to me, can you see them? Can you see them? Well, I couldn't, which didn't help her, but I seriously couldn't see them. But I wanted to keep her calm, so I just reassured her that all was well and she had got a gift, which she does. So Leanne remains transfixed on what she can see. Of course, me and the other two ladies can't see it, but Leanne's almost frozen, looking intensely as her eyes follow the lights that nobody else can see. So she's just following the lights with her eyes and staring at them. Margaret then stepped forward and says, look, you're not allowed to take videos in here, but I have taken a video because this is what I've seen. Does it look like this? To Leanne. And she produces her iPhone and shows us a video of streams of plasma balls of light moving through the chapel. Now, there wasn't one or two. There was loads of them on this video. You could see it as clear as anything. She said you were not allowed to take videos, but I couldn't resist. I could see these balls of light. And of course, Leanne's, yes, that's what I can see. That's what I can see. So obviously, there is energy there just outside most of our visible spectrums, but Margaret had managed to see it and Leanne had managed to see it, and Margaret had even actually managed to video these plasma balls of light. Margaret then goes on to say, they use this place as an energy portal. So I'm like, who uses it? And she said the UFO activity here is seen all the time. And the plasma balls of light are consciousness. The video was truly extraordinary. Obviously, I couldn't video it or take the footage with me, but we were privileged to see it, all four of us. And she also spoke to us about seeing lights coming and going into Wallace's cave. Well, of course, we never got to Wallace's cave because it was too slippy and the weather wasn't conducive for going down there. And she said that the houses around the glen, because she lived in one of the houses around the glen, many people have seen these plasma balls of light entering, and also crafts entering, UFOs, whatever you want to call them, entering into Wallace's cave, which seems to be a really strong portal where they somehow use the energy of the earth to charge their crafts. She said people have been told that aliens and UFOs aren't real. They are, she says. This place is extraordinary. She then goes on to talk about the actual chapel being privately owned by the Sinclair family, the St. Clair family, should I say. And she then goes on to say that Rosslyn Chapel is protected. During the war, it was never bombed. It's never been under siege. It's like these plasma light beings look after it because they know the value of the energy frequency that's coming from the land, and they use it. And I'm quite sure, this is me now, not Margaret, but I'm quite sure that if we learn how to harness that energy, maybe we could use natural energy from the earth to fuel transport and, not rape the earth of whatever we're doing at the moment, because I'm not really sure. It's only information that I've been told by scientists that, it's not good for the earth what we're doing. I don't know whether it is or it isn't because I'm not that well educated in that area, but I do know natural energy when I feel it, and I knew that there was a natural source of energy coming from the land, and particularly in the church. So maybe our ancestors and maybe the plasma beings notice it and know how to use it, because she says that she feels that they use a natural source of energy to power their crafts. Wow, this is amazing. I'm like in awe of what's happening. I've been charged with the heart energy off the pillar. I've been stood underneath the crown chakra. Leanne's time slipped. We stood at the top of the crypt waiting to go down, and of course the monk had told me that that's where I had to go. And Leanne's looking and seeing with her physical eyes plasma balls of light. Whoa, this is meeting and beyond all expectations. So I told Margaret all about my meditation and what the monk had said to me about the crypt and script, and how confusing it was that the monk in the meditation had said that crypt and script were no coincidence, that they sound the same. And she says, well, that's not a coincidence in the chapel either, because the only writing that is on the wall is above the crypt. No way. Oh, yes way. Come see. So translated, it says something like, men are strong, women are stronger, wine is stronger still, but the ultimate strength is found in truth. I remember thinking, well, that's quite profound, isn't it? And that is what was written on the wall. The rest were like carvings and images. There was no other writing on the wall other than this. And I think it was written in Latin. I don't know. But anyway, that's the translation of it. Now, I was quite eager to go down into the crypt after Leanne having her two amazing experiences and wondering what was in the crypt for me. So before we went, Margaret said that when you do go down into the crypt, hold a particular stone, and if you are sensitive, the cosmic beings will speak to you, and the stone is in the wall. So it's like, right, okay. And I'm like wondering if she tells other people this, and she was like, no, only those that I know are energetically aware. So I starts going down the steps into the crypt, and that's when it happened. Oh my God. As I'm going down, I feel this huge wave of fear start to develop within me. And I couldn't breathe. I really, really couldn't breathe. And I desperately wanted to leave this crypt. But there were people behind us on the steps, and we were halfway down into the crypt, and Leanne's got hold of me and my friends got hold of me saying, it's okay, come on, calm down. Well, by this time I'm almost hysterical. My body is shaking with the energy that's coming up inside of me. I really didn't like it, and I would have fallen to my knees if Leanne and my friend hadn't gotten hold of me. It was terrifying. And my logic mind was saying to me, for God's sake, Jackie, get a grip. What are you doing? But all of this was happening involuntarily. I genuinely found it hard to breathe. I was trying to catch my breath and I just couldn't stop shaking. And I was breathing very shallow and very fast. And I didn't like it at all. I really just wanted to leave. But my friend was really comforting. She was giving me Reiki while I was going through it, and Leanne's reassuring me, saying everything's okay, I'm here for you. And I don't think I would have gone through it if they hadn't have been with me. And I know I definitely would have had a different reaction if Mark had been with me. So I'm really, really glad that my friends came to support the work that we were doing and also recognise the value of it. So after a relatively short period of time, the fear, whatever it was, it just left me. But I was still shaking and trembling, but the fear had totally gone. And the ladies reminded me of the reading where it said a past life would be cleared. Now, to this day, I cannot tell you what the fear was, but I definitely felt lighter afterwards. And maybe I'm not meant to know what the fear was, but it really was gripping within me. And when it left, I felt like something had just totally cleared from my energy field. And although I don't think I would have been in such a rush to experience it if I'd have known, and I definitely will proceed with a little bit more caution next time I enter an energy portal, but I can see why my higher self would be excited at losing a fear that was so gripping. But the extreme sensations and the non-logical experience were so intense. I'm not going to lie, it was, yeah. And the strange thing is that nobody else experienced any of what Leanne and I did. So my mind then pondered, were we just drama queens? Or could this be because we were ancestrally linked in some way to the energy, and that we were clearing something maybe of our ancestors, maybe something that was in our DNA? I don't know. And also maybe Leanne was activating something because her inner eye had become so active. Lots of questions and not many answers, I'm afraid. But the experience was real, very, very real. And there was, other people with us to experience it. And none of my friends and nobody else in the chapel appeared to have the experiences that we did. Anyway, I did manage to gain composure and head across the crypt to the stone that was indicated by Margaret, and apparently initiates conversations with the aliens. Now, I must have no bloody reset button because I blindly go forward and hold the stone. Hello, Jackie, what are you doing? You just stood there and had this really intense energetic experience, and here you are stepping boldly forward with no fear. Maybe that's because it left me. Afterwards, I did think to myself, as if you hadn't had enough of the energy for one day, but obviously, keen as ever, I step forward and hold this stone, or put my hands on the stone, which is in the wall, by the way. It's not just a freestanding stone, it's a large stone in the wall. And sure enough, in my mind's eye, I can see a plasma being of light, clear as anything. And it spoke to me. It said quite a lot, but the main thing that I felt that was extraordinary and definitely not on my mental radar at the time was that it said, we don't have emotions. I was like, oh right, yeah, I never actually considered whether an alien had emotions or not. I just assumed they were like us. I suppose I'd never really even given it time of day, never even thought about it. So he said, or I don't even know whether it's a he or a she, but I'm going to use the he. But he said, we can't feel what you can feel. And that is why we need people like yourself to help us interact with your world. Because we can't feel, we can't energetically project what's needed, but we can help you understand and then change your vibration and project into the atmosphere. We are here, he said, ensuring that there is a balance in the cosmos and to aid the ascension of the vibratory alignment of the planet into purer realms of existence, basically. There was so much more that was said, but maybe I'll remember and share it another time because we have got it recorded somewhere. So we went back up the steps into the chapel and met up again with Margaret, who spoke to us about the cymatics on the wall of the chapel, on the ceiling of the chapel. Now, I had no idea what cymatics were. I'd never really heard of it, but one of the ladies in the group with us did know and explained that cymatics are the shapes that are produced when a note is played. Usually, sand is placed on a brass plate and a note is played, and the sand moves through the vibration and creates a definite shape. And apparently there were over 200 cymatics in the chapel in the roof, which are sacred symbols that have been there creating a resonance or a vibration according to the notes that they represent. So remember here that the chapel was built in the 15th century, so they were obviously a lot more advanced than we are today, because it's only recently that these notes have been deciphered. Two men, father and son, after 27 years of study and research, Tommy and Stuart Mitchell, decode the mystery of the cymatics, these square blocks that are on the ceiling, and states that the musical score has been frozen in the chapel for 600 years. Inside the chapel there are 13 angels, Tommy Mitchell calls the orchestra of angels, which are carved into the chapel's arches and who appear to be musicians, he says. Surrounding the angels are 213 geometric symbols that were found to resemble sound waves at different pitches. Now, after decoding all these symbols to match the sound waves, they found that the song, which researchers state is part of the cymatics music system, also known as the Chladni patterns or something, which is the study of wave phenomena associated with the physical patterns produced through the interaction of sound waves in a medium. Okay, so we're talking about vibrational medicine here, vibrations being emitted from images, and these images are creating a vibration. Margaret goes on to say that these musical vibratory notes that are coming from the cymatics are emitting a constant vibration that holds the energy of the chapel and surrounding area at the correct frequency for the cosmic beings to use. Oh my goodness, this is like futuristic scientific, isn't it? This is like knowing that sound can make a shape and the shape can emit the energy of the sound, and that can have an impact on our wellness. Wow. Okay, now Gary in his book, The Holy Axis, says that many sources call the ley line that runs through Rosslyn Chapel the Rosslyn, and that's where the name came from. Rosslyn, Rosslyn. And that Lyn translates to meet generation or lineage, which has led to some alternative researchers to deduce that the name refers to a holy bloodline or indicates a north-south ley that runs from Arthur's seat through the chapel and is known as the Rose Line. Now, in the Da Vinci Code, it's mentioned about the Rose Line being the generation or the lineage of the Christ energy, the bloodline of the Christ energy, which is quite phenomenal, really, isn't it? And it's suggesting here, from what Margaret's saying, that the vibration is being held at a certain frequency to enable the energy of the land to provide the frequency for other beings to interact with us. Quite extraordinary. Leanne and I stood there after she'd spoken about Tommy Mitchell and his son Stuart, because my mother's maiden name was Mitchell. We're both standing there aghast. What are we hearing? So we've come to learn about our ancestral lineage, and apparently the line is Scott, which is my maiden name, and the people that have deciphered the code is Mitchell, which is my mother's maiden name. Now there appears to be a connection with the surname of Scott and Mitchell that we cannot believe we are hearing. Okay, now you're really, really pushing me. Let's just see how all this develops and not get ahead of ourselves here, should we? Because I will grant you that what I'm hearing is really extraordinary, but, to suggest anything other than it just being a coincidence or whatever at this moment in time, I need more research. So we cannot believe what we're hearing. And I know I came to find that connection with my ancestors, and this is really blowing me away. So as we finished the day in the chapel, we reluctantly left and began conversing in the car on the way back to the Georgian house. Now, synchronicities start to go off the scale after being in there, because as we drive out of the chapel, right across the road is a place called Dolly's Cafe. You don't hear the name Dolly very often, and my Nana Mitchell was called Dolly. Leanne started laughing and said, "Oh my God, what are the chances of that?" And we continue driving along the road and further along the road. And because they're all little villages, it's not like you're driving in a town or a city or anything. It's just little villages. We drive along the road and there's an inn called Gordon's Inn. And my father's name was Gordon Scott. It seriously was like being in a sci-fi movie. So we returned and we made our way back to our own homes, me back home, and said goodbye to the ladies, having had an extraordinary experience. When I get back home, I decide to research Sir Walter Scott and see if he was in fact a relation to me. And I have a cousin who I don't see very often who lives in Balfron in Scotland, and he is very, very into his ancestral history. And I email him and I ask him if he knows if we are linked to Sir Walter Scott. So he emails back and says, "What are you up to?" And I give him a brief details of what I'm doing, and he says he'll get back to me. So in the meantime, Sir Walter Scott, as I research, lived in a magnificent house called Abbotsford House, which apparently he was born quite poor, and through his writings he managed to purchase monies to buy this magnificent house. He earned his money as a writer. Okay, another synchronicity. My father was a writer. He didn't have many things published, but he wrote many monologues, poems and short stories. Many birthdays I would receive a poem written for me by my father, and one of my dad's short stories was called The Lady of the Lake, and he sent it away to be published, and it appeared in a woman's magazine and was the highlight of his writing debut. Now get this. As I'm researching, I had not actually heard much about Sir Walter Scott before, so whilst researching him, it turns out he has a famous piece of work that is called, guess what? The Lady of the Lake. Synchronicity number 2. I've still got my father's writing somewhere, and here I am learning that Sir Walter Scott has got a very, very famous piece of work that enabled him to buy this incredible Abbotsford house based on most of the money that came from the poem. Oh, it's prose, I think. I haven't actually read it. I did look at it, but it's rather a long one, and I haven't taken much attention. I just thought the synchronicity of the name of the prose as the name of my father's writing were well the same. This is all really blowing my mind. And then I see Sir Walter Scott's birthday. He was born on the 15th of August, the same day as me, in 1771. And this is getting more and more bizarre by the minute. If you go on to Abbotsford House, you will see that there's a video that walks you around the house. So I'm like, right, okay, maybe my next port of call on this pilgrimage is to go to Abbotsford House. So I have a look at the video. Absolutely taken aback by, because when the video starts, you walk in through this amazing front door, which is like something out of a Spanish old film, one of these wooden doors with the amazing plates on it and everything. And as you walk in, there's a suit of armour, King Arthur, and you've guessed it, the Excalibur. This Excalibur does seem to be turning up rather a lot as I am on this journey. Anyway, my cousin comes back to me and says he has looked into the ley line and details that I have sent him, and the ley actually runs through his garden. The ley line runs through my cousin's garden in Balfron on its way either way to Iona, and he asked me if I'd like to go up and check it out. So My adventures will be continuing in the new year with a trip up to meet my cousin in Balfron and a trip to Abbotsford House, in the hope that I can absorb or reignite some of my ancestral gifts of writing, helping me to finish the book that I started. Before I want to finish, I just want you to know that all this is true. I haven't made anything up. If you're energetically aware and you want to go up to Rosslyn Chapel, there is an amazing book called The Holy Axis. Have a look at it, or if you want some advice on what to do, or maybe even join me. We might do another excursion up there. I think you will be really surprised at how powerful the energy is. Okay, so take care for now, and I will see you soon.